Imagine spending millions of dollars to outfit a school district with the absolute most advanced tablets, virtual reality headsets, interactive digital displays.
Oh, yeah, the whole works.
Right. And then you discover that the students actually retain more information when the teacher brought a literal rock into the room.
A literal rock. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly counterintuitive.
Yeah.
We often operate under this default assumption that, technology automatically equals progress.
Right, like you put a glowing screen in a room and you just assume everyone looking at it is magically going to get smarter.
Exactly. But that is exactly like buying a high-end, ridiculously expensive treadmill, putting it in your living room, and assuming it's going to make you fit just by sitting there and looking at it.
Yeah, it's the classic trap.
The machine itself doesn't do the work. I mean, the technology is essentially useless without the human behavior and the deliberate design driving it.
It really is falling in love with the hardware and completely forgetting about the human being operating it. I mean, the treadmill needs a runner, and an educational tool needs a learner.
Right.
Without understanding how the brain actually processes information, a supercomputer is, well, it's really no more effective than a piece of chalk.
Which brings us to the core of what we are getting into today. Welcome to this deep dive, where we have been poring over a massive stack of your sources.
We really have.
Tons of professional education notes, curriculum guides, theoretical frameworks, all centered on the fascinating and, let's be honest, often misunderstood world of technology in education.
Misunderstood is the perfect word for it.
So our mission for you today is to extract the hidden architecture behind all of this. We want to pull back the curtain on how technology is actually meant to be used in the learning process.
Moving past the whole screens equal smarts myth.
Exactly. We want to uncover the deliberate scientific design that turns a mere gadget into a genuine educational experience. But to do that, we kind of have to take a step back.
Yeah, before we even look at the screens and the software, we have to understand the evolution of learning theories. Because the apps and programs you use today, they didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Right. They were built on decades of intensive psychological research.
Exactly. So if we go back to the early 20th century, the dominant framework defining education was behaviorism. Think of Ivan Pavlov and his dogs.
Oh, sure. Or Edward Thorndike and B.F. Skinner.
Right. They were looking at learning purely as a mechanical process of observable behaviors, stimulus and response.
They treated the human brain like a black box, essentially.
Completely. They didn't care what was happening inside it. They only cared about the inputs and the outputs.
The sources actually highlight Edward Thorndike's 3 specific laws of learning here, which are really foundational.
Yeah, they are.
First, there's the law of readiness, meaning a learner actually has to be mentally and physically prepared to receive the information. Like if you're exhausted, the input just doesn't register.
Makes total sense.
Then there's the law of exercise, which is basically drill and practice. The more you perform a specific task, the stronger the neural connection gets.
Right, repetition.
And finally, the law of effect, which states that if a response is followed by a satisfying reward, that specific behavior is going to be strengthened.
And that one is huge. I mean, B.F. Skinner took that law of effect and essentially built an empire on it.
He really did.
He developed what he called operant conditioning. He believed you could shape almost any behavior by carefully controlling those rewards and punishments.
And what's fascinating for our deep dive is how directly Skinner's theories translated into the very first educational technology.
Yeah, Skinner actually invented a physical teaching machine in the 1950s.
So long before iPads, we had literal mechanical boxes shaping behavior.
Precisely. And Skinner's ideas led straight to computer-assisted instruction, or CAI, specifically those drill and practice software programs that totally dominated early computing.
Oh, yeah.
The mechanism is simple but powerful. The computer presents a question, which acts as the stimulus. The student types an answer, the response.
Right. And if the answer is correct, the computer immediately flashes, "Good job," or plays a happy little sound.
Exactly. That immediate feedback is the reward.
It is basically a behavioral vending machine. You input the correct response, and the machine dispenses a little dopamine hit of a reward.
A dopamine vending machine, yeah.
It is highly structured, very predictable, and entirely machine-controlled. But, well, treating the brain like a black box only gets you so far, right?
Right. Which is why the sources show a major historical shift away from merely observing behavior toward a new framework called cognitivism.
This was the moment researchers finally opened up that black box.
They did. Instead of comparing the brain to a vending machine, they started comparing it to a computer. They began looking at how human memory actually processes, stores, and retrieves information.
They cared about the internal mechanism.
Exactly. But even that wasn't the final destination. Cognitivism eventually evolved into a much more radical framework, which is constructivism.
I love the analogy for this. If behaviorism is a vending machine where you just push a button to get a result, constructivism is more like a sandbox.
A sandbox, yes. Perfect way to put it.
It is the belief that learners don't just passively receive information from a teacher or a screen. They actively construct their own unique meaning based on their personal experiences.
Right. You're given the tools and the environment, but you have to build the castle yourself.
And within that sandbox, one of the most critical concepts we uncovered in the sources comes from the theorist Lev Vygotsky.
Oh, Vygotsky's huge here.
He introduced the zone of proximal development, or ZPD.
The sweet spot of learning.
Yeah. It is essentially the gap between what a student can do completely independently and what they can achieve if they have a little bit of competent assistance.
Right. So they aren't bored because it's too easy, but they aren't completely overwhelmed either.
Exactly. And that competent assistance is called scaffolding.
Just like in construction.
Right. You build a temporary support structure around the learner to help them reach a higher level of understanding. And as the learner becomes more capable and confident, you gradually remove those supports until they are standing on their own.
And under this constructivist model, the role of technology totally flips. It's no longer just a digital flashcard or a mechanical presenter of knowledge.
It becomes something else entirely.
It becomes an intellectual partner. It provides a rich context for learning by doing and acts as a social medium for a collaboration.
Let me push back on this for a second, though.
Sure.
Because if constructivism is the absolute gold standard now, and education is all about actively building your own meaning in this collaborative sandbox, why do we still rely so heavily on drills?
That's a really fair question.
I mean, anyone who has ever used a modern language learning app on their phone knows it is essentially just a slick, gamified version of Skinner's teaching machine from the 1950s.
Oh, totally.
So is Skinner just wrong? Are those apps bad technology?
Well, we have to be careful not to throw out the foundation while trying to build the roof. The sources make it clear that both approaches absolutely have a necessary place in modern education.
Okay, so they coexist.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you need to memorize multiplication tables or learn the basic vocabulary of a new language, the law of exercise, that rote drill and practice, is essential for basic skill retention.
Right, you need that cognitive automaticity so your brain doesn't have to work so hard on the basics.
Exactly. However, if you want a student to write a persuasive essay in that new language or solve a complex engineering problem, you must shift to the constructivist approach.
Ah, I see. So drills build the foundation, but constructivism builds the house.
Nailed it.
So if the theories are the foundation, how does a teacher or a corporate trainer actually design the blueprints for this house?
I need a plan.
Right, we have all these theories about how the brain works, but how does an educator design a lesson without getting totally distracted by the newest, shiniest gadget?
That is the big challenge.
You don't just walk into a hardware store, buy a tremendously expensive pneumatic nail gun, and then say, all right, what kind of house should we build just so I can use this tool?
No, you'd end up with a very strange house.
Right, you need a structural blueprint first.
And the sources provide us with the actual blueprints that professional educators use, which are known as instructional design models.
Let's break those down.
One of the most foundational frameworks is the ADI model. It stands for Analysis, Design, Development, Implementation, and Evaluation.
Wow, that sounds intense.
It is a highly systematic, rigorous process. You don't even look at the technology until you've spent significant time analyzing the learning problem, the audience, and the constraints.
Which makes sense. I mean, jumping straight to the tech without the analysis and design phases is how a school ends up dropping half its budget on interactive smartboards that ultimately just get used as very expensive dry erase boards.
That happens way more often than you'd think. But to prevent that, there is another model in the notes that gets even more granular for classroom teachers, which is the ASSURE model.
Right, well, sure.
It stands for Analyze Learners, State Objectives, Select Media and Materials, Utilize those materials, Require Learner Participation, and finally, Evaluate and Revise.
And the absolute golden rule across all these models, which the sources hammer home repeatedly, is that the very first step in selecting media is always determining the objective and the needs of the learner.
Always.
It is never about picking the technology first. You don't walk into a classroom and say, I really want to use these virtual reality headsets today. What should I teach to justify them?
Exactly.
You look at the curriculum and say, my students need to intimately understand the human circulatory system. What is the single most effective way to show them that?
And sometimes the most effective technology isn't digital at all.
Right, which perfectly sets up Edgar Dale's cone of experience. I found this part of the notes incredibly eye-opening because it completely redefines how we think about advanced tools.
Dale's cone represents a spectrum of learning experiences. It ranges from the most abstract experiences at the very top of the cone down to the most concrete, tangible experiences at the base.
So what's at the top?
At the top, the most abstract level, you have verbal symbols like printed words, text, and spoken language.
Wow.
And at the very bottom, you have direct, purposeful, hands-on experiences. Right above that bottom layer is what's called realia, which means bringing real, physical, everyday objects into the learning environment.
Which highlights such a fascinating irony in modern education.
Oh, it really does.
Because sometimes the district will spend a fortune to ensure every single student has a high-end tablet. And then the teacher uses that tablet to have the students read a dense, text-heavy PDF about geology.
Yeah, reading a PDF on a glowing screen.
Technically, they are using advanced digital technology.
Yeah.
But according to Dale's cone of experience, that PDF is actually the least concrete, most abstract learning experience possible.
Exactly.
They would be significantly better off, and the students would retain more, if the teacher just brought a literal rock from the parking lot into the classroom and let them hold it.
It all comes back to the psychological principle of less is more. When you force an advanced tool into a scenario where a simple one would do, you overload the learner.
You just clutter their brain.
Right. Just like a chaotic, cluttered chalkboard is going to confuse students, poor technology integration causes a cognitive bottleneck known as split attention.
The sources detail a concept called spatial contiguity here, right?
They do, and it's a crucial mechanism to understand.
Think of spatial contiguity like watching a foreign movie where the subtitles are at the very top of the screen instead of the bottom.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Right. Your eyes have to constantly dart back and forth between the actors' emotional expressions and the text translating their words.
Yeah, you miss everything.
Your brain is wasting valuable processing power just navigating the bizarre layout of the screen rather than absorbing the story itself.
That is split attention in a nutshell. If the tech is too flashy, or if a diagram and its explanatory text are separated on different screens, the learner's working memory gets exhausted.
Just trying to put the pieces together.
Exactly. The technology must offer clear communication effectiveness. If the tool creates a barrier to the content, it is literally just noise.
So if the blueprint dictates the tool, and we want to avoid creating that cognitive noise, how does a teacher actually know they aren't overusing the tech?
It's a fine line.
Right. Where is the line between a helpful visual aid and the technology entirely taking over the lesson?
Well, the sources break this down into 3 distinct levels of technology integration. At the baseline, we have simple or basic integration.
What does that look like?
This is where the technology is certainly helpful, but it doesn't fundamentally change the pedagogical method. For instance, a teacher has a small historical photograph, so they scan it and use a digital projector so the whole room can see it at once.
Okay, so that's basically just digitizing the status quo.
Pretty much.
The teacher is still lecturing at the front of the room. The students are still passively listening. It's essentially a digital poster board. What does it look like when the technology actually starts changing the assignment?
That brings us to middle-level integration. This involves a purposeful use of tech to support a specific learning area.
Like a project.
Yeah, a great example from the notes is a teacher asking students to research H fever using internet databases and then using publishing software to create an informational health leaflet for their community.
Oh, I like that. The technology is actively supporting the task, and the students are manipulating information to create something new.
Exactly. And finally, you reach high-level integration. This is where the technology acts as the central instructional tool.
It completely redefines the task.
Right, in a way that would be literally impossible without the tech.
The sources cite an amazing example of this. There was a school in the Philippines using live video conferencing and shared cloud databases to partner with a school in the United States.
That's a great example.
The students collaboratively exchanged scientific data on indigenous herbal plants in real time. You literally could not execute that lesson with just a chalkboard and a textbook.
Not a chance. And at these higher levels of integration, the fundamental nature of the media changes. We move from traditional multimedia to hypermedia.
Let's define that, because that's an important distinction.
So traditional multimedia is just combining text, audio, and video like watching a documentary. It is a very linear experience.
Right.
Hypermedia, however, allows for learner-controlled sequence and pace. It provides multiple branching navigation routes.
Like browsing the web.
Exactly. The learner is the one deciding what link to click, what concept to explore next, and how fast to digest the material.
I have to interject here, though.
Okay.
Because from a practical standpoint, isn't giving the learner total control of a hypermedia environment a recipe for complete chaos?
It can be.
Right. You put a 12-year-old on the internet with multiple navigation routes and tell them to direct their own learning. What if they just click around aimlessly?
Yeah, they could easily get lost.
What if they end up going down a rabbit hole on a totally unrelated video and learn absolutely nothing about the actual learning objective?
That is the exact danger of the sandbox we talked about earlier.
No.
And it is precisely why the teacher's role becomes more critical, not less.
Really? How so?
Well, the nature of the role fundamentally shifts. In a hypermedia environment, the teacher can no longer be the primary dispenser of knowledge standing at the podium.
They can't just lecture.
Right. They have to evolve into a facilitator or a guide. Because hypermedia offers so much overwhelming freedom, the teacher has to provide that Vygotskian scaffolding we mentioned.
Ah, keeping them on track?
Exactly. They design the parameters of the project, they guide the student's inquiry, and they help the student synthesize the massive amounts of information they are uncovering.
And if we are handing this much agency over to the learner, the student actually has to step up in a major way, too.
Oh, absolutely.
The traditional 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, are simply not going to cut it when you are navigating branching databases and global collaborations. The learner needs a completely new psychological toolkit.
And the sources define this modernized toolkit as 21st century digital fluency.
Digital fluency.
Yeah, true fluency is so much more than just knowing how to operate a machine. It is broken down into several distinct components, starting with solution fluency.
Which is what, exactly?
This is the cognitive capacity to define a complex problem, design an actionable solution, and critically assess the result. Then there is information fluency.
Now, this one is crucial. If you are listening to this and you've ever felt completely paralyzed trying to learn a massive new software system at work, you know what this is.
Oh, we've all been there.
Or, if you've ever Googled a mild symptom and ended up on a forum convincing yourself you have a rare, incurable disease, you have experienced the critical need for information fluency.
Yes. It is the ability to access digital data, but more importantly, to evaluate its accuracy and bias. Navigating a sea of misinformation requires serious analytical skills.
It's not just finding the info, it's knowing if it's real.
Exactly. From there, the sources detail collaboration fluency, which is the ability to engage in effective teamwork within a virtual space where you might never meet your partners face-to-face.
Very relevant today.
Then there's media fluency, which involves a critical evaluation of messages coming from various digital mediums. And finally, creativity fluency.
That's the output side, right?
Right. That's the proficiency to package your own messages and solutions using artistic elements like design, layout, and typography to really make them impactful.
It is a staggering shift in expectations for both the student and the teacher.
Mm.
But we also have to acknowledge the grounded reality of the situations many educators actually face.
Yes, the boots on the ground reality.
The sources are very clear-eyed about the massive practical challenges of actually making this high-level integration happen.
It's not easy.
We're talking about the exorbitant costs of hardware and maintenance, a serious lack of computer-literate teachers in certain districts, and administrative bodies that are understandably slow to fund these massive systemic changes.
And beyond the logistics and the budgets, there is a profound behavioral and ethical challenge that educators have to manage, which is digital ethics.
Navigating cyberspace requires a tremendous amount of personal and social responsibility.
It really does. The sources highlight the absolute necessity of implementing acceptable use policies, or AUPs.
The rules of the road.
Exactly. Schools have to explicitly teach students about intellectual property, citing sources properly, avoiding software piracy, and protecting themselves from technological threats.
Like the love bug virus mentioned in the historical context of the text.
Oh man, the love bug virus, yeah, exactly like that.
It paints such an incredible contrast when you zoom out and look at the whole picture. We are handing modern learners the most powerful, expansive information gathering and communication tools in human history.
Literally the world at their fingertips.
But before they can truly utilize them, To reach that high-level integration, we have to teach them not to accidentally break the system or purposefully steal from it.
Right.
It is exactly like handing a teenager the keys to a high-performance Ferrari.
Yeah.
You don't just put them in the driver's seat and say, figure it out.
That would be a disaster.
First, you have to sit them down and teach them the basic traffic laws, how the brakes work, and the ethical responsibility of being on the road so they don't crash it into a wall.
That's a great way to think about it. True digital fluency isn't about keystrokes or mouse clicks. It is about adaptability, critical thinking, teamwork, and ethical behavior in a globally interconnected world.
It's a mindset.
Exactly. If an educational system only teaches a student how to turn the machine on, it has fundamentally failed the fluency test.
Let's bring this deep dive all the way back to where we started. If we look at the core definition synthesized from your sources, educational technology is ultimately defined as a complex, integrated process involving people, procedures, ideas, devices, and organizations.
It is a whole ecosystem.
It is never just about the hardware. It is about solving the fundamental problems of human learning and expanding the learner's universe.
It is the deliberate, scientific design of the learning environment. Whether that environment utilizes a piece of chalk, a literal rock, or a global video conference.
The tool is just a tool.
Right. The technology is just meant to help bridge the gap in that zone of proximal development. It is about providing the right cognitive scaffolding at the exact right time.
The treadmill doesn't make you fit. The running does.
Yeah.
And the glowing screen doesn't make you smart. The structured, meaningful engagement with the material does.
Perfectly said.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up. We've talked extensively about scaffolding and Vygotsky's zone of proximal development.
We have.
But imagine a very near future where educational technology continues to evolve to the point where an artificial intelligence can perfectly adapt to your personal ZPD in real time.
An AI tutor.
Exactly. An AI that can monitor your cognitive load, give you exactly the scaffolding you need, exactly when you need it, better and faster than any human teacher ever could.
That's entirely possible.
So if technology can truly achieve that level of flawless personalization, what then becomes the unique, irreplaceable value of gathering together in a physical classroom with other human beings?